Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am excited to announce that we are finally getting air conditioning in the Versatile. So we've got the grain cart hooked up and we're doing some finishing touches on it because we're getting ready to cut some rye, which you can see over there. There's another piece you can't see over yonder. There should be a video up before this one. We bought a combine and it is sitting right over there, International 1480. I gotta go finish doing the walk around video on it, but it should be up before this one if you want to go check that out. So we're getting ready to harvest, and we're finally gonna get some air conditioning put in the Versatile. So I'll talk about what we had considered and looked at a little bit later in the video. For right now, I just want to talk about what we decided to do and what we actually ended up with. So this is the unit we ended up with right here. I'm not sure if it's pronounced Velet or Velet. I'm pretty sure it's Velet. I'll talk about pricing later because it's going to vary for you. So this is just the air conditioner, and it's DC power. It's not AC, which is one of the problems we had. So I went with the 12-volt one when I was ordering. So it should operate between 20 and 60 amps, 8,000 BTUs, operating temperature between 38 and 125 degrees, which is, if it gets to be 125, we're not going to be out working ground anyway. That's too hard on the equipment. And I didn't actually know this when I ordered it. It's 134A, which is impressive. And the noise, we don't care about noise level. I mean, it's really, have you seen the power plant that's in that tractor? If we were concerned about noise level, we wouldn't have that Versatile. And they give you all the dimensions here for cutting the holes and everything. You know, they're pretty good about giving you dimensions and instructions and stuff. It's really simple, and they send a remote because it's intended for a camper or an RV. Another interesting thing that I noticed is that they actually intend for you to charge this. So I think they have quick connects on it. I haven't taken the cover off and looked, and they give you this chart to tell you what to charge it to, but those of us that understand air conditioning don't need that chart. So over here, we have the unit itself. They sell this in white, but the white was out of stock. It wasn't going to be back in stock until, what is today? Today's the 20th, and it wasn't going to be back in stock until around today, is what they were saying. And I ordered this a week and a half ago, because I asked Dad about it. I said, do you really want to wait for the white to come back in stock? And he's like, well, no, let's get it coming so we can get it put on. We can paint this white, and we probably will, just so it'll reflect heat a little bit better. But they send you pretty much everything you'll need. They send you the rods and studs and nuts and everything to mount it and keep it in place. They send you, the big seal. They send you the trim. They send you a 6-gauge cord. I don't know what actual wire they use. I'm pretty sure it's just aluminum coated copper or copper coated aluminum. Because that's what they like to use these days. It doesn't feel heavy like a good proper copper cord. Remote, but it should have actual functional controls on it. Fuses, additional seals and pads and zip ties and, more stuff. It's pretty simple. So, and then, of course, these here. These are actually pretty heavy, pretty substantial. They are supposed to go across underneath and help hold everything down. So, 8,000 BTU should be more than enough for that little tractor cab. And some of you might say, well, that's going to be way too much. You'll be too cold. No, I don't think so. And the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of glass in that cab. I don't know if you've noticed. And that's great in a lot of ways because it's just increased visibility. But then again, it's bad because the sun just cooks you. This is old glass from like the 70s. So this is before they really had dedicated UV protection and reflecting properties, and it's old stuff. And it's great in a lot of ways because it's just flat and straight, but it's bad in that it really magnifies the heat. So I think 8,000 BTU is going to be used to its maximum. This unit, okay, so the purchase cost plus the freight was $1,700 or $1,800. So it was on the more expensive side, but it wasn't really any worse. It was actually a little bit cheaper than some of the other places I was looking. Most of the other places I was looking that were cheaper were alternating current, which is fine if you have a camper. If you have a tractor and you switch to alternating current, well, then you have to go from... You're going to go from your alternator to your battery, and then you have to have a transformer or a converter, whichever the right term is. One of you people that knows electrical better than I do will know what the right terminology is. But you have to change it from DC at the battery to AC and then send it up to the unit. And that was just a lot of extra steps. And initially we had looked at doing that, but this was a better option, we thought. So there were a lot of different things we had looked at doing with this. One of the first things we had considered was using this Sanden compressor that was already on here and putting an old camper rooftop unit up with the compressor deleted. So essentially we would just have the fan, the condenser, and the evaporator from that old unit with the compressor down here. And initially that's what we had looked at doing. But the problem is with that unit, it was alternating current. And so we would have had to, again, change from direct at the battery to alternating, and then set in probably like not a surge protector, but something to clean the power up, if that makes any sense. Those of you that know will know what I'm talking about. If you don't, it's not a big deal. Just basically we were going to have to clean up the power so that we didn't overload it or fry one of the circuits or something, because that's just how electricity works. I'm doing a very bad job at explaining this, so I hope you understand what I'm saying. But that was the first thing we had looked at doing. One of the other things we had looked at doing was buying an alternating current rooftop unit and replacing this and putting a generator in. And then we thought, well, no, that's kind of stupid, because if the engine's not running, then that's not going to run. And, you know, what RPM would we have to run the engine at to get the right output from the generator? And the generator was expensive, so any money we saved buying an AC unit, we would have made up with the generator and the transformer or converter and all the other stuff. So we would have come out about the same. I had looked at, and I've been talking with a guy on the email there. He was asking me some questions about this Versatile. And hi, John, if you're watching this. He's bought 2 of these now, which I think is kind of cool. I am glad that somebody is preserving these. But he said that he had put in one of his a Red Dot unit. And I had not heard of Red Dot before, so I'd been looking into them, and they seem like they're pretty quality built units, but they're expensive. And the lead time on some of the units that would have worked well for us on this tractor, they were pretty pricey. So that's why we didn't get one. But Red Dot has like a shit ton of different options that you can get to put on these. One of the things that they offered was a hydraulic-driven compressor. And so the way it looked, I thought, okay, we could replace this, put that hydraulic-driven compressor up here, or we could put another set of remotes on the back and run and do things that way. We have enough room on the back. We could have gone with more of a mini split. It would have been a little crowded. Well, no, actually, hang on. We could have put it on the other side, and I'll show you what I mean. We would have had room for a mini split right here on this side, and I see Dad's been busy sealing stuff up. He was cleaning the cab the other day, so I guess he got bored and decided to really seal some things up. Mini split, we looked at that, and Red Dot sells DC units. But again, they were kind of complex and they were expensive, and the places I was looking at getting them from, and I looked at several different places. The lead time was just too long. We couldn't afford to wait. And he really started sealing stuff up. Dad was out here the other day cleaning the cab up and everything. It was so dirty in there because we haven't had climate control in this for years, and so we've been running it with the doors and windows open, and all that dust gets in there, you know. Just a quick aside in case I forget, the alternator should have more than enough juice to keep the batteries charged with the unit that we bought. And if we don't, we'll put a bigger alternator on. Fleet Pride sells them. This is the unit we were originally going to use. This is a Duotherm Brisk Air 2. And the fan... Why won't the fan turn? Oh, the fan won't turn because I had all those wires there. Yeah, that makes sense. We were originally going to use this. The cover for it is outside, and so is the rest of the stuff. I deleted the compressor. I still have the compressor because it was working. It's just the only place I had to plug this in was the welder, and the 115 volt outlet on the welder is just not having it anymore. But it did work, and man, it cooled really, really good. The problem is, again, it's alternating current. But this was heat and AC. And that was something that I had looked at for a while, was heat and AC, so that we had everything all in one. But it became extremely difficult to find a heat and AC unit in direct current. And I actually only found one, and it was a red dot. But the problem was they had a separate compressor. It was an engine-driven compressor, which we didn't want to do. We wanted everything self-contained. So we decided not to go with that. The other problem is when you get something like this that has a heat pump on it, the mini splits are the same way because the one in the house does this. If it gets below a certain temperature, you can't heat with it. It won't work, which to me is kind of silly, but that's just the way, I guess, physics and thermodynamics operates. So just air conditioning is fine. We don't run the tractor enough in the wintertime to really need the heat, and we could make a better heater if we just got a heater core with a fan and some duct on it. We could just run a line through the radiator and just use the engine coolant like every other sensible person does, and that will work just as well. But air conditioning is the bigger thing. I'm not going to throw this away just yet. We're going to hang on to it, but I wanted to show you that this is what we were originally going to do. It's just going from DC to AC, we decided was not worth the expense. So the last bit that I will show you, because this is going to be pretty boring stuff, there's not really much to show. The last thing I will show you, oh, Dad even got the new toolbox in here. Clean the carpet and everything. So we're going to fit it through that hole, which I believe is where the pressurizer went. That guy I was talking to in the email that I mentioned earlier, he said that I think one of his Versatiles still had the pressurizer in it, but that's... My understanding is that's not the same as the air conditioning. The original air conditioner was down here on these Versatiles. And it was an afterthought, kind of, by Versatile. They didn't come standard with air conditioning until, I think, the Series 2s, when I guess they really caught on down here in the States. Because remember, Versatile's a Canadian company. So it's supposed to fit, according to the book, a 14 by 14 opening. I mean, that's not 14 by 14, but it will be enough. I'll go up on the roof, and I'll measure, and I'll mark, and I'll get the hole cut, and I'll either try and mount it myself, or I'll wait until Dad gets back, because he's gone today, and we'll both get up here and mount it and seal her up, and it should come to about, I think it only comes down 4 inches, so it'll probably stop about here, and then from what I saw underneath, it's got 4 vents that you can turn and everything. I don't know that we're going to get a lot of air directed on the windshield, but we're not going to have much use for that. It shouldn't fog up, and if it does, I'm sure we can find a way around it. Now that we've deleted all the original AC system, we don't have the compressor clutch controls, we don't have the blower motor controls, we don't have the lower unit, we don't have that stupid upper unit that used to sit here. Now we can actually run some wires, and if we needed to, we could even hook up, the wiper system. We could hook up additional fans and not put any more load on the electrical system, and that would be pretty slick. So I'm gonna get to measuring and cutting and stuff like that, and I'm just gonna show you guys before and after, because that's really about all that's interesting here. This video is mainly just gonna be me talking about what we did, why we did it, and how it works. So I'll catch up with you guys later. Yeah, so I almost forgot to mention, I was just thinking about this. so we're all on the same page. This is coming off. All these old line. Well, this isn't an old line. This is actually a brand new one. The lines and stuff are coming off. So that's going to be gone. All of the, these lines here will come off. I guess Dad decided not to pull those jumper cables. One day I might mention what those are for, because it's kind of silly. But all these lines will come off. The dryer will go away. The dryer is actually brand new, so I'll probably put it back in the box. I think I still have the box. And we'll delete all that stuff up there. I might even get bold and take those brackets off the cab. Not sure. We may, actually, no, I'll leave them because we could put a light back there. That's one of the next things that Dad wants to do to this, is put some lights on it, but they won't be like factory. They'll be custom, because that's just how this farm works. But we are taking all those lines off just so we are clear on that. We're not going to leave them. I'm going to hang on to the compressor. I think the compressor's still good. It's, these old Sandins here, is that a 4868? Yeah, that's a 4868 Sandin. They're tough. I mean, they are really tough little compressors, and they do a good job. It's just that with this system, the weakness was the condenser and the evaporators. It was just a goofy system, but we're going to fix it and make it right. I have verified that, well, let me back up. The book says that this will fit a 14 by 14 opening, so I centered everything here. And I've got my 14 by 14 marked out. It's a little bit bigger than it needs to be, but it should be pretty well centered this way. So I'll get everything cut out. I may have to undo all these bolts here and flip them around so that the unit can sit flush. Or we may have to drill a couple of holes elsewhere and set it. I don't know. We'll just have to see. Probably going to have to take all these out. But this plate here is fiberglass, or it's at least a composite. So I'll drill a hole. I'll use a jigsaw to cut it out, and should work pretty good. Well, I was wrong. It was actually aluminum, and it made quite a mess. So I'll have to get the vacuum or something later, because the air compressor's not, well, the air compressor's over there, and I don't really want to hook onto that trailer and drag it, because I'd have to move the combine, and I don't really want to move the combine. So I'll get the vacuum later and clean that up. But the hole's cut. It measures approximately 14-ish. We can flush it out if needed, but that should work pretty good. I am now certain I'm going to have to pull these bolts out, but I'll take a closer look at the unit and make that determination. So the next step, we'll be setting this bad boy on here, and we'll see what that looks like. Well, here we are the next day. We got her in, got everything bolted down and set. It's, it's special because it wouldn't be a real project if it wasn't special. We went with these chunks of square tubing. We have a million of these pieces of square tubing, and this is one of the things they work really good for. And the reason we did it this way is because the brackets or braces that they sent with the unit, they did not extend out onto the steel part of the roof, because this panel's aluminum. And so when we put this thing on, it wanted to sink a little bit. Not enough to damage anything. It's just because it was aluminum that it wanted to do that. So we put these on to kind of help spread the clamping force out. And it has made a difference. It's not perfect. If we really wanted to do it correctly, we'd run braces. We'd brace it here and back here, because these are the strongest points on the cab, because that's a frame. And we would brace and shore that up with steel, and then we would have this pretty well solid. But we're not going to do that. This will work good enough for now, and then if we don't like it, we'll mess with it later. But it cools pretty good. The airflow seems to be decent. We haven't gone out in the field and run it yet, so that'll be the real test. But just sitting here idling the tractor, I mean, it charged good. It comes with a remote, so you can see the temperature and the fan speed and all that on the remote, so you don't have to try and, look at that display screen that's right there, keeping in mind that this was designed for a camper where it wouldn't be such a big deal to do that. You can't really do that when you're driving the tractor. So the remote's handy. The current draw, it says, should say right up there, 40 to 60 amps on a 12 volt, which is what this is, obviously. And it draws, I'm going to say, based on this gauge here, it probably draws about 55 to 58 amps. It's not quite the maximum, but it draws pretty close. It's about to peg out the gauge, but I don't think the alternator's struggling, because I don't know this for a fact, but I believe that's a 130 amp alternator. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm certain that's what it is. If it's not 130, it's like a 95 amp alternator, but it had to have been bigger because it was running, with the old stuff, it was running it was running the lower unit, it was running the upper unit, it was running the condenser on the back. So it had to have been a pretty hefty alternator. So I'm not worried about the current draw. We just routed the cables out and hooked them up to the battery. Nothing fancy there. And it seems to work fine. So can't ask for more than that. It's not really exciting or complicated. And, you know, it doesn't make for a good video in that regard. But I'm not here to make everything exciting. Sometimes simple things are the best, you know. So we ran the cord around because, you know, this looks like junk, right, with the rusty square tubing. But if you've looked at the rest of the cab in any of the videos I've ever made on this tractor, there's no cab kit in this. It's pretty much barren. So we just ran it around, and there's a vent back here. I just pried one of those little louvers up, and it's hooked. It's hooked to the battery out there. I'm gonna have to step outside the cab. I don't want to do that. But it's just hooked up to the battery, nothing fancy. That's pretty much it, actually. I can't think of anything else important to add. It works. It's simple to install. It's customizable. And how you can mount it. We had to get a little special because, you know, like I said, it wouldn't be a real project if it wasn't special. So it should work good for us. I will come back later in the year when we're done working ground and stuff, probably in the fall, October, November. And I'll try and do a more comprehensive review of how well it did in varying conditions. And if we had to make any changes to the electrical system. But I think we'll be okay. The voltage, it's charging. So it's charging faster than it can draw out of the batteries, which is the biggest thing. So, you know, we can start the tractor after having run it. But we'll just keep an eye on this. And if it acts like it's not charging quite as well as it should, it seems a little sluggish when we go to start it, then we'll put a bigger alternator on. Or what we could also do, and I lied, I'm going to get out of the tractor now. We could just put a second alternator on. We got room if we could figure out how to mount it, because I pulled the old compressor and all the mounting brackets off of here. There was a lot happening in this area. They had this bracket bolted to the block, and then they had this bolted to that bracket, and then they had this bolted to that bracket, and then they had this thing to adjust the tension, and they had this belt, which I just cut instead of trying to pull it off because, well, it's junk anyway, really. It would have run forever if we just left it alone, but I would have had to take off the fan belts, and I didn't really want to do that. Sue me, I guess. You know, so it looks better now. I'll pull these old lines off a little bit later, as in this afternoon. That should look a lot nicer. That's always the hope. So, I'll get out of your guys' hair. That's pretty much all there is to it. I'll drop a link in the description if you're interested in checking this thing out. And there are a lot of other options out there. This is just the one we decided to go with, and it seems to work pretty good. So, you know, if you don't want to try and gamble on something different, if you want something that is going to work, this would probably be a good bet. And if we run into any problems, I'll do some update videos on fixing it, dealing with them. Until then, we're going to get back to work on stuff. We've got a grain cart to finish getting ready. And then the plan is to cut the rye tomorrow. Today's Friday, so tomorrow would be the today's the 21st, I think, of June. And we'll go cut the rye and see how the combine does. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. I know the last little bit here was all over the place, just trying to make sure I covered everything important. And we'll catch you guys in the next one, whenever that will be. Take care.